We're going to start the first Maimer, Parshas Vayikrah, page 3 in these pamphlets. The Maimer, the Alter Rebbe said, Parshas Vayikrah, that year was also Parshas HaChodesh, Rosh Chodesh Nisan, in the year Tov Kuf Ayin Beis, so that's 1812. So here the Alter Rebbe is going to address the first pasuk in the Parsha, Vayikrah el Moshe. And there's several diukim that the Alter Rebbe makes immediately on this first pasuk, and then he'll take us on a little journey, explaining a general inyan with regards to the Mishkan, which is really connected with last week's parsha, a pasuk in last week's parsha, Parshas Likutei, and with that he'll explain what the pasuk of Vayikrah as it's coming as a continuation from the pasuk of last week's parsha, and then we'll understand why the pasuk is formulated the way it is, as Alter Rebbe will address. Okay. Vayikrah el Moshe. So the first diuk is, anybody that opens up the Chumash, Parshas Vayikrah, sees it right away, that the Aleph de Vayikrah, the Aleph of the word Vayikrah is Ze'ira, is a small Aleph. And what you don't see, but the Alter Rebbe points out that in Divrei Hayamim, the last book of Tanakh, so there it says Adam. The word Adam there, it's a history of from the beginning, from Adam Arishon. So when it mentions Adam, it says it ba'alef rabasi. It says it with a big aleph. L'havin zeh. So why by Vayikrah el Moshe it's a small aleph, and by Adam it's a big aleph? There are different answers to this question, but the Alter Rebbe is going to explain according to Chassidus, based on the general concepts that he's going to introduce in the Maimer. Another point that he points out, that he brings from this pasuk, is based on a medrash. He's going to bring a medrash now, and he's going to bring a zoyar, and both the medrash and the zoyar point to the same thing. The medrash points out the difference between the Vayikrah here. The word Vayikrah means and he called. And Hashem called Moshe, and the medrash points out that it's different than it was by Avram Avinu. By Avram, regarding Avram, it says Vayikra Malach Hashem al Avram. The Malach called Avram. So who called Avram? The Malach, not Hashem himself. And the Malach Keire V'Adibur Medaber. So Hashem spoke, but the Malach called V'Adibur Medaber B'Ramhocha. But over here, in the Medrash says in our parsha Vayikra, Omer HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Anihu HaKeire V'Anihu HaMedaber. I'm the one that's calling, I'm the one that's speaking. So that's a diuk that the Medrash makes. The fact that it says Vayikra Moshe, he called Moshe. Over here is different than what we find by Avraham Avinu. And then we see this similar point that's made in the Zohar. V'cheinu b'Zohar Parshas Balak. Also Vayikra el Moshe. So the Zohar says, Kala de Malka v'lo shlicha achra. It's the Kala of the Malka, of the Melech, and not al yidei shlicha achra, not through another shliach. In other words, not through a Malach. Literally identical point as the Medrash makes. Doesn't mention Avraham Avinu, but the identical point that the kriya, the color is coming from the Eibishter. So based on these 2 points, this point, which is from the Zohar and from the Medrash from the Zohar, So So if Hashem is the one that's calling, so it should have said, Vayikrah Hashem el Moshe. The fact that it doesn't say it, it leads us to maybe believe that it wasn't the Hashem calling him. So why doesn't it say clearly that Hashem is the one who's calling? In other words, why is it ambiguous? Why doesn't it mention who is the one who's calling? So that's the second diuk that we have on the pasuk. So the first one was the aleph, and the second one is the fact that it doesn't say who the one is calling, Vayikrah, without saying who's calling. Even though later on in the pasuk it says Vayidaber Hashem Elav, Hashem spoke to Moshe. That's later on in the pasuk. But when it says who called Moshe, it doesn't say Hashem. In another point, Alter Rebbe it says that we need to understand the Bazayah. He asks a contradiction, literally a contradiction in the Zohar. In the Zohar, in Parshas Vayikrah, Kasu Vayikrah el Moshe, he brings our pasuk. It says Vayikrah el Moshe v'loi kaber man hava. The Zohar says it doesn't say who that was. Ela b'chol hani. All of these because Zohar brings different examples, but included in that is our Vayikrah el Moshe Malacha de Bris have. Who was it? It was the Malach of Bris. The Malach of Bris. That's how the Zohar identifies who the one who was calling. And they all, the Eibishter is referring to Hashem who spoke. So what do we have? We have a contradiction in the Zohar. A seeming contradiction. Parshas Balak, we said, we brought from the Zohar, that who is the one that's calling here? The Eibishter is calling. It says Malka, Kala de Malka. And here in the Zohar, in Parshas Vayikrah, it says that it was a Malacha de Bris. Okay. For Inyan, so here the Alter Rebbe introduces the Inyan, and then he'll explain that Inyan, which really gives us the background that's necessary to understand the diukim that the Alter Rebbe made. So in the Parsha, what is Vayikrah? Vayikrah is a continuation of last week's Parsha, Parshas Pekudei. What does it say in Parshas Pekudei? It says, "V'lo yachol Moshe lav el Elmeid." Moshe Rabbeinu couldn't come into the Elmeid, ki shachin alav ha'anan. Why couldn't Moshe go in there? This is after the Mishkan was built. Moshe Rabbeinu couldn't. So the Torah says the Anan, there was a cloud that rested on the Mishkan, and it didn't allow Moshe Rabbeinu to go in. Ukved Hashem moleis haMishkan, and the Kved Hashem, the glory of Hashem, so simply understood, filled the Mishkan. So the Alter Rebbe explains the pasuk. Pirush, Shachan alav ha'anan. What does it mean, Shachan alav ha'anan? What does it mean that a cloud rested on the Mishkan? So the cloud, what is the cloud? The cloud is a level of a godliness, of a likus. Why does that level of godliness, why do we describe it as a cloud? So the Alter Rebbe will explain right here that a cloud means that it's hidden, concealed. So we're talking about a level of a likus which is concealed, a very high level, as Alter Rebbe will say now. So it's a hashra. What's residing on the Mishkan? It's a erein seif, the infinite light of Hashem, which is coming from a makim elyon v'neira, a very high and awesome place. Shenemar boy, regarding the place. Regarding it, it says in Tehillim, David HaMelech describes it as Yashus Choshech Sisrei. That the Eibishter places the Choshech, that's Sisrei, that's where he resides. In other words, the Choshech, he's referring to this level of Elikus that's coming from Makim Elyon. V'neira, he calls it Choshech. Why is he called Choshech? Why is he called it darkness? Because because we're referring to a level of elikus, which is soiviv. Soiviv means that it transcends the world. It means it can't be received within the world. What do we mean when we say that it can't be received? Meaning that it can't be grasped. Because no machshava could grasp Hashem. And Al Rebbe brings another pasuk from Tikkunei, another quote from the Tikkunei Zohar, "V'an chakim v'lei v'chacham yediyah," describing the Eibishter. "V'an chakim," you are chakim, but not chacham yediyah. When we say "an chakim," we describe Hashem with the level, with the description of chachma. That's not the chachma as we know chachma. In other words, it's beyond how we don't understand it. Less machshava tvisa beklal. V'hu ha'yidea v'hu amada. From the Rambam. The Rambam says, "Hu ha'yidea v'hu amada." We don't have any way of understanding this. That which is known, and that which and through which we know. So, in other words, the one who knows. The person who knows by an individual, and the seichel that he uses to know, his brain, his mind, are two separate things. There's the person and there's intellect. By Hashem and that which is known, it's all one. So we have no way of really understanding what that is. So in other words, all these three things Alter Rebbe points out. Number one, less machshava tvisa beklal. Number two is antu chakim v'lei b'chachma yediyah. And number three, hu ha'yidea v'hu ha'amada, point to the same. It's the same nekuda that Hashem is beyond our grasp, beyond the understanding. And because of that, all of that is just to explain. Is leading to the idea. Why is David HaMelech referred to Hashem Yoshes Choshech? Why is he referring to him as darkness? Darkness means that it's beyond our grasp, beyond our understanding. Something which is beyond your understanding is called darkness. It's dark because you can't perceive it. So choshech, here the Alter Rebbe spells it out. Hu davar she'ein nira b'shum tvisa v'asaga klal. So all of this was an explanation. The Alter Rebbe is translating, elucidating what the pasuk says. Shachin alav anan. Moshe Rabbeinu couldn't come in because the anan resided there. What do we mean when we say the anan resided there? That means that it was dark. Why was it dark? Why are we describing it with darkness? We're talking about a level of soiviv, which is dark. It means it's incomprehensible. It can't be grasped. So the Alter Rebbe now opens it further and explains it. We say in Shemon Esrei, Ata Kadesh v'Shimcha Kadesh. You are holy and your name is holy. What does it mean, Kadesh? The word Kadesh, we had many times. Kadesh means that it's beyond your understanding. Kadesh means that you recognize that the Eibishter is beyond your grasp. So we say two things here. We say Ata Kadesh, Ata referring to Hashem, you, and then not only Ata Kadesh, but even Shimcha, even your name, which name, the whole idea of a name is so that other people can call you. The whole idea of a name is that you're accessible to other people, you're known to other people, you're recognized by other people. But by the Eibishter, even Shimcha, even your name is also Kaddish, is also beyond. That's what the Alter Rebbe says here. Pirush shekam b'china shmei hu niskav levadei she'ein arich le'elamis im shmei yisbarach klal. It's uncomparable, the elamis, to the shmei. Atzhu yisbarach kaddish umuvdum le'elamis. So when we talk about memalik kalamin, what is memalik kalamin? That here we're talking about a level of elikus, which is mislabish, which is permeates and is and is invested within the world. So now we're not talking about Shmoi, because Shmoi is Kaddish. What are we talking about? We're talking about a hoidei v'zivei of Shmoi. So it comes out here, you have three levels. You have Ata, Kaddish. You have Shimcha, Kaddish. What is mislabish in the world? That's hoidei v'zivei, a hoid of Shmoi. Rak hoidei v'zivei shel Shmoi nimshach l'eretz Shemayim. Dahainu, ha'ara ba'alma b'chin Shmoi. Ach, pirush Ata Kaddish. So the Ata Kaddish is saying that, in other words, if it says Shimcha Kaddish, why does it have to say Ata Kaddish? If Shimcha Kaddish, for sure Ata Kaddish, right? If your name is transcendent, that it can't, it's unfathomable, it's not, you can't grasp it, it's Kaddish. So, and obviously Ata yourself is for sure Kaddish. So why are we saying Ata Kaddish? We're pointing out that even a ziv, even an expression of Ata, that also is unfathomable. That's why that's the chidush of Ata Kaddish. That's how the Alter Rebbe. Pirush Ata Kaddish, Dahainu HaKadosh Baruch Hu b'chveidu v'atzma shelamayda v'china shmei. Hainu shafilu b'china ziv ha'hoid of that. Okay, so this is an explanation on that which we say Ata Kaddish Shimcha Kaddish. This tells us how much the Eibishter is completely transcendent, is beyond grasp. Now we take it back to what we're saying here. Shachin Alava Anan. Anan, we said, refers to the darkness. What's darkness? That it's beyond our grasp, beyond understanding. Val derech zeh, that's the Alter Rebbe now connects it back. Val derech zeh yuvan pirush yashish cheshach sisrei dahainu kivan shafilu ziv arim and yisbarach, even a ziv and ha'ara of Hashem, even shmoi ein yaelu mesichil lekabel klal. So therefore, what is it called? Lakach nikra etzem Hashem cheshach. That's why it's called cheshach. V'aziv sheyichilun lekabel. What is the ziv that they are able to be mekabel? That's called Shimcha Kaddish. That is a ziv of Shimcha. V'nikra ziv Ashchina. Okay, so that's the with here he ends off the point. This explaining what is the cheshach. Now the Alter Rebbe brings some zoyar that says in Raya Mehamna that what is this level of Yashas Cheshach Sisrei in the spheres? It refers to Keser. This is Keser Elyon. Keser is high beyond the other spheres. So all the other spheres, you have a gilui, meaning there's a certain hashpa, there's a certain expression that comes from them, and therefore, whether it's more or less, whether it's chachma, bina, whatever it is, whichever level it is, there is a gilui. Keser is beyond gilui. Keser, and that's why Keser is called cheshach. So that's what it says in the Raya Mehamna. And regarding this level of Keser, the level of cheshach, that's what the pasuk refers to in Parshas Likutei when it says that Moshe Rabbeinu couldn't come in. Why? Kishachan alav Anan, because the Anan resided there. Okay, so that's four words of the pasuk, right? Kishachan alav Anan. But then the pasuk continues. It doesn't stop there. It says Ukveid Hashem Moleis HaMishkan. What's the pasuk adding with these words? So the Alter Rebbe brings from the Zohar for a diuk. It doesn't say that the Kved Hashem Mileis HaMishkan, because then it would be understood as the Kved Hashem filled the Mishkan. It doesn't say that. It says Moleis HaMishkan, meaning the Zohar points out, this is a diuk from the Zohar, that the Kved Hashem was Malay. The Kvod Hashem, it itself was filled. It itself was completed. Which we need to understand what that means. So the Alter Rebbe will explain. But the Kvod Hashem itself was filled, and that led to the fact that Moshe Rabbeinu wasn't able to enter into the Mishkan. Let's see inside. Pirush b'Zoya Parshas Noach, v'Reisha Parshas Vayikrah, my Malay v'loy Milo, Ela Malay v'adai di Smalya Mikaela. Malay means that it itself was complete. It itself was filled, was completed. What itself? The covenant itself. And I'll try to explain. Va'inyan. The ikipashti dekro. If you learn the pasuk simply, shekved Hashem milela mishkan, that it filled the mishkan as would be as simply understood. That was the explanation why Moshe Rabbeinu couldn't come in, because it filled the Mishkan. So then it should have used, the pasuk should have used a different word. It should have been vowelized differently. It should have said Mila mibayale. The Hoya Pirush. Then we would understand Raksha b'chinas hakavod Milas HaMishkan. Of Amedichsiv Malay, the fact that it says that Kvod Hashem Malay mashma oidzos, that what Shebechinas Kvod Hashem nishlama v'nismala, that the covenant itself was complete and filled. In other words, something happened to the covenant itself. You have the covenant itself on the way it is, on its own, and then you have the covenant itself becomes complete. Once the covenant was nishlama, we'll soon see what the level of covenant is. But once the covenant was nishlama, then niskala kvod Hashem shebechinas hu b'mishkan. That level that completed, that made the covenant malay, that was what was nisgala. That was what was revealed in the Mishkan. So the Alter Rebbe explains it further. Ki pirush kvod Hashem. What is kvod Hashem? Hainu memale b'chinas memale klam. That's referring to the level of Hashem. That's the level of godliness which is memale. As he brings from the pasuk, we say in Avalatzi, in the pasuk from Yeshaya, it says kvod hainu ziv yikare. So that is ziv yikare. That's the shine from Hashem. Shehi b'chinas midas malchusei yisbarach, which that's referred to before. We said Yashas Choshech. We talked about the Anan. That's Keser. Over here we're talking about the Malchus of Hashem. Shenikras Gamkin Chachmat Hata, which is also referred to as the lower level of Chachma. You have Chachma Ilah, which is Sfiras HaChachma, and Sfiras HaMalchus is also called sometimes Chachmat Hata, the lower level of Chachma. Shehi Makid Biyah, which that is the source of the worlds of Bria Yitzir Asiyah. Shorsho Mekera, where it's the Sherish and the Makir of it's called Chachmat Hata because it shows on its Sherish. Where is it Sherish? B'chinas Chachma Ilah, Shehi Anikris Kavod Ilah. Uba in Kavod Ilah, in Chachma, the Sherish of Chachmat Hata, the Sherish of Malchus, there is the Hashra of Erin Sof Baruch Hu Mamish. There in Chachma, that's where the Erin Sof resides, as the Alter Rebbe brings also in Tanya, that he heard from the Magid, that only where does the Erin Sof reside? Only in Chachma, because only in a place which is completely batal can you have the Erin Sof reside there. Shal zeh nemar eini nos kvedecha, which is what Moshe, that regarding that level, that's what it says. Show me kvedecha. Not the lower level, but the higher level. So again, the Alter Rebbe, we didn't finish explaining. We had a diuk in the Zohar. The Zohar said that the pasuk uses the word malay and not milay, which means that the kavod was completed and filled. What is the kavod? So we define the kavod that refers to the level of malchus, chachmat hata, memalik kalamin. Right? That's the kavod that we're talking about. And then you have a kavod ilah, you have a higher level of kavod, which that is the level of chachma, and in the level of chachma, that's where the Ein Sof resides. Okay, we're going to complete the idea, the point that the kavod was filled, the kavod itself was completed. And here the Alter Rebbe says, that's what it means that we ask Baruch Kved Hashem, that the kavod of Hashem should be Baruch. What is Baruch? Should come down. Mimkoimei, from its place. Pirush. What are we asking when we say Baruch Kved Hashem Mimkoimei? Tashebchinas midas malchusis Baruch. So this is the same idea that we're alluding to in the pasuk, that bchinas malchusis Baruch. Hamemale kol almin, which we said, but that's the kavod of Hashem. That's the memale kol almin. So that yiyem is Baruch. So that should be mizbarech. That should become complete. It should be mizbarech. It should be filled through the fact that it was drawn down to it, the b'chinas mekoymei, from its makim, from its source, which is v'sharshe uchachmei ilah. That's the chachmei ilah, which the higher level of chachma, which we just described, is the kavod ilah, and the kavod ilah, that's where the Ein Sof resides. Roishu makar kol habrachas. The who, and this is what is referred to as the amshacha of soviv kol almin in memale kol almin. The soviv kol almin referring to the Ein Sof which resides in chachma, and that should be nimshach, that should be drawn down into malchus. Malchus is memale kol almin. There, that's the chachma tata. That's the source of biyah, and the Baruch Hashem, Baruch Kved Hashem Im Koymer, the kavod of Hashem, which is the chachma soviv, should be drawn down into malchus. Balzen Nemar, the Alter Rebbe concludes that Balzen Nemar Baruch Kved Hashem Im Koymer, Pirush shebechinas midas malchus is Baruch Hamemale kol almin. We said this, yeah. So that's the idea of that the memale kol almin should be nismale, should be filled with the soviv, with its source. Now going back to what we said in the pasuk. The pasuk again, we're focused on the pasuk in Parshas Likutei, an introduction to the pasuk of Vayikrah. So there it says, "Kved Hashem Mali," the pirush azayah. We're not talking about the Mishkan. We're talking about the kavod Hashem, the kavod itself, which means Malchus. Malchus is nismale from its source, which is Mimchinas kavod ilah. V'hainu, why? What allowed that Malchus should be able to be nismale, that it should be connected to its source, which is Chachmei ilah? It's because Shachan Alavana ala Mishkan. Because there was Shachan Alavanan, because there was such a high level of Gilui, because of the level of Choshech, which Choshech is beyond Soviv and Memale, it's beyond Soviv, we said is Chachmei ilah. Memale is the Malchus, Chachmei ilah, or Kavod ilah, and Kavod tata. But because there was a Shachan Alavanan, because there was the Anan there by the Mishkan, that allowed that there can be a Hizgalos, Soviv, and Memale can come together. That's what he says. The Pirush, V'hainu Levi Shachan Alvan and Ala Mishkan Shuam Ham Shachas B'chinas Makavelyin V'ayidei Zeh, because Nimshach Gam Ken Hizgalos Soviv Klam Memale Klam V'B'chinas Pnimi, and that V'hu Moles HaMishkan Mamish, that filled the Mishkan Mamish. So because you had the Anan, that allowed that you should be able to have the fusion between Soviv and Memale. So now that we understood, so all of this, all these paragraphs were explaining a pasuk in Parshas Likutei. So now that we learned the pasuk, so now we understand why Moshe Rabbeinu, that's what the pasuk says, Moshe Rabbeinu couldn't come in to the Mishkan. Moshe Rabbeinu, as high as Moshe Rabbeinu was, he wasn't able to receive from this level of Yashas Chayshich Sisri.
So why do we ask?
So the Ma'ila Me'ed, which is very high. Yeah?
Why do we ask Baruch Kved Hashem Kema if even Moshe can't handle it? What do we ask? We're asking for the Anan to come down to...
That Malchus should be Nismale, and then you still need it still requires a Nesinas Koyach, which we'll see, Moshe. That's the Vayikrah. The Vayikrah is a Nesinas Koyach, which allows the Moshe Rabbeinu to Hagam Shabar Sinai Nemar Vayavi Moshe B'Techanon. So Alter Rebbe addresses the Chura. We find that Moshe Rabbeinu did go into the Anan. So how does that shtim? How does that fit with what we're learning till now? So the Alter Rebbe doesn't. He brings the answer of the Zohar. He doesn't really explain. So the Alter Rebbe says, "Tiras b'Zohar Parshas Vayikrah Tre Anan have." There are two levels of Anan. So in other words, not every time it says Anan, it refers to the exact same thing. By the Anan that we're talking about here, that it describes the Parshas Likutei, is a much higher level than the level of Anan that it describes the Matan Torah. By Matan Torah, Moshe Rabbeinu was able to go into the Anan. Over here, Moshe Rabbeinu wasn't able to go into the Anan. V'hinei lachei nemar Vayikrah Moshe. That's why it says Vayikrah Moshe. Vayikrah Moshe pirush inyan kriyazu. What is the Vayikrah? That's the Vayikra. That's the beginning. What is the Vayikra? The Vayikra is that Moshe Rabbeinu should be able to go in. So Vayikra here, the Alter Rebbe is going to, and he develops this in the second chapter here. What is the Vayikra? Vayikra means that Moshe was giving an Esinas Koyach that Moshe Rabbeinu was able to, because we just described why it was a level that Moshe Rabbeinu wasn't able to. It was a very high level of Seviv Kalam and of Chaysheh, higher than that allowed the Seviv to be fused with Mamale. So Moshe Rabbeinu wasn't able to go into the Mishkan. Vayikra was opening up a path, allowing that Moshe should go in. So what is the Taitra Vayikra according to that? So Alter Rebbe says that the Vayikra means that he called, means that Moshe Rabbeinu was Mekabel. He received something that allowed him to be able to go in. What's the Yisod of that? The source of that? That Vayikra means to be Mekabel, that to receive something that allowed Moshe to go in. The Alter Rebbe brings the Targum Yonasan that we say. It says Vayikrah zel zevi omar, that the Malachim called one another. The Alter Rebbe asks, why does the Malachim need to call each other to say Kaddish? To have this high realization of Kaddish, why did they have to call the other Malach to join? And the Alter Rebbe explains it. But the point there, without getting into the details, is that the word Vayikrah, the Targum says, means he was Mekabel. They're Mekabel. The Malachim were Mekabel. They received. Moshe Rabbeinu here also received the Nesinas Koyach, the ability to be able to go into the Anan. And how does it describe Moshe Rabbeinu receiving? There it says with a small aleph. Aleph, if you turn the letters of aleph, is Pele. Pele is Keser. Pele means wonder. It's higher than Chachma. So the aleph, the Keser that Moshe Rabbeinu, that allowed Moshe to receive, to be able to go in, was a small aleph. It was tzimtzum. That level was nisamtzim to Moshe Rabbeinu, and that in turn allowed him to go in to the Mishkan. Okay.
How's the olive pellet?
Aleph. The word aleph is aleph lamed pei.
Ah.
You take
over.
right,
Yeah.
so you invert it.
Yeah.